then, Theo? What's it all about?
Well, I think the centre ground parties have taken a kicking, undoubtedly. But my advice to Labour today would be don't panic and don't overreact. I think Reform have clearly been incredibly successful in this election. But I think some of the challenges that have led to this are not something that's happened overnight. I think we've had a long period of low or no growth. I think people feel that things haven't been working. And I think what we saw today, overnight, was a sense of people really want change. So I think the government have to respond to that. But I don't think they should overreact.
It's interesting you say the government should respond but not overreact. I mean, there's been already one call from a Scottish Labour MP to say that Labour's not doing enough for its kind of core voters, by which he means go left. Surely the instinct of the Labour leadership will be to go right on issues like immigration.
I think Keir Starmer is really not an ideological person. He's a very pragmatic person. I think there's people in the Labour Party who would wish he was either more on the right, more on the left, or just generally more political. I think he was going to take a very pragmatic approach, as he has done. I think my advice would be that one of the things that people voted, and they did so in large numbers, for a massive Labour majority, one of the reasons why they did that in the last election was because there is a sense in the country, I think everyone knows that things aren't working. And I think everyone also knows that there is no quick fix to that. And the answer to that is also not, it's all of the immigrants' fault. There are lots of problems that we have in healthcare, welfare, housing, and so on. And there are undoubtedly elements of that where immigration plays a role. But I think sort of lumping it all together and seeing it as, well, the solution to this is to go harder on immigration would be a mistake. I think what the public recognise is that these big challenges are going to take 10 years to fix. So I would say to Labour that they shouldn't abandon that rhetoric they had around the decade of renewal, being serious on the big things, in the sort of hope of doing something short-term on immigration, which is, after all, what governments had tried previously and it hasn't worked. So I think you need to fix the big things, and I don't think fundamentally that those problems, those systemic problems, are caused by immigration.
I mean, I think Labour can take comfort in the fact that it is clearly the narrative from Nigel Farage that he is replacing the Tories as the main opposition. But that leads naturally on to the point that come the next election, Reform will be in a strong second place in a lot of Labour seats. I mean, could Reform make the difference between a Labour majority or not at the next election?
They certainly could. I think we still haven't had all the results from last night. I think from the perspective of the Conservative Party, where we are at this time of day today is a bit like when, the old Roadrunner cartoon where there'd be a bit where he's sort of running in midair before he would collapse down the cliff. I think we haven't had all of the really tough areas where Reform are facing the Conservatives. What we have had so far today is where Reform have given Labour a kicking. I think what's going to be very interesting to see later on today is how much of a kicking are they giving the Conservatives. The Conservatives, as you know, have been the most successful party in Europe because they keep reinventing themselves. And we sort of expect them to do that again. But this challenge from Reform is probably the greatest they've ever had.
Absolutely. Well, Theo Bertram, thanks for coming on the show and talking about the local election results. Theo Bertram is Director of the Social Market Foundation, a think tank and a former advisor to both Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, who's giving us his analysis of the